Hi, and welcome to the Scientist Sage Sangha. I'm Nancy Anderson Dolan from Wise Heart Wellness, and we're here gathered to talk about an interesting subject tonight, motivation. And the idea of motivation is so perplexing to a lot of people, and it's been the focus of so much research and experimentation and all sorts of things. And it's not like everybody figured out everything about it because they're still changing ideas. And it's really different from person to person. That's one of the difficulties in researching it because what motivates someone over here doesn't motivate somebody doing something different over there. And so it really is how do you find this elusive substance called motivation? And we were just chatting before that sometimes there are external motivators like children, or somebody wants to work in a certain job, or there's something comes up and they think they want it, but it doesn't correlate. Okay, so two people could want the same job, and one person is highly motivated to go and get it. Another person, they think they'd like it, but they never go forward. And so the basis of it, and what I want to talk about a bit tonight, is how do we do it for ourselves, for our individual selves? Because I don't know if any of you have ever been to someone, motivational speaker, things like that. And you get all this like, yes, yes, yes. And sometimes it lasts all the way home. And sometimes it lasts for a day or so, a month or so. And it doesn't necessarily last long haul for what you want to be doing. So it's not that those things are bad. I have been inspired by so many motivational speakers. But the trick is, how do I find the parts of the message that apply to me and to take them home and be able to access them? And so it really is, how do I take that motivation and move it along? And the most interesting thing that they have found is that motivation often kicks in after we start something. And they don't really know, like, well, why does this happen that way? And what they found, though, was that it looks like this graph I'm going to share with you. And literally, the motivation we need is really, really high at the beginning. But as we've started something, what happens is the need for motivation starts to decrease for most people, not everybody, but a lot of people. And then the motivation to carry it out once it's in motion isn't as much. And there's a saying, it's a physics, I can't remember the guy that physics, but what they found was that when something gets in motion, it's just a sheer physics principle. When something gets in motion, it stays in motion. And so if anybody actually knows who said that, let me know. But the idea of once I actually start moving, it's easier to keep moving towards something. And we have an idea about what we want to do, but we don't necessarily know why is behind it. And probably in the early 70s, there were lots of motivation things about you just have to think big and all of that sort of thing. And then you just have to collect a community, and then you just have to have a good plan. And what they found out was all of those things worked well for some people. So different people needed different things like that. But the idea that we don't need as much motivation after can help us go, okay, I'm going to gear up and get the plan aligned and then start the ball rolling. And as long as I don't go and have a nap, then I can keep the ball going. And I certainly found out that for myself in a number of things, like quitting different substances and behaviors and things like that. It was really challenging in the beginning. And then as I just, it was much easier to do the next day and the next day and the next day. And when I understood that, then I thought, oh, I can still do it today. And the 12-step programs talk about taking it one day at a time. And that's how the motivation gets sustained. You don't think about it like, oh, I'm going to have to do this forever, because I'm not entirely sure we'd repopulate the planet if people were casting forward to the 18 years of money and time and effort you put in to raise a child. And so, yeah, we don't want to think that far. I want to think, okay, I can do this today, and I can do this for the next week, or those small bits. And there's a principle I want to share with you that was in the email that went out about this week. It's called the Goldilocks way of being motivated. And what that means is we're inspired by, like, oh, this is an interesting goal, an interesting challenge. But if the challenge is too hard, then we don't stick with it. It has to literally, can't be too easy. We get bored too fast, or too hard. We get discouraged. But just like Goldilocks and Three Bears, it has to be just right. And so we can actually have some input there. So if we have a big thing we have to do, if we break it down into manageable things for us, so not for what anybody else would consider manageable, because someone else might be able to do a lot more at one time. I have trouble sitting still, so I can't sit down and, type out a whole bunch of things and do all of that for hours in a row. I have to break it into smaller things. And so if I get up and I actually stay in the bathroom for the amount of time it takes me to brush my teeth and my hair and wash my face and all that, that's a huge win for me in the morning. I haven't wandered off and done something else. And so that for me is the Goldilocks thing. That's just the right point. I only have to do 4 things in there. But if I can do and stay 4 things, good, I'm glad. And I get going in the day. The other things are how important something is to you. And for a really long time, I tried to do different kinds of exercising and that sort of thing. And I really enjoy things like hockey and swimming and that. And so I could sign up for that kind of thing, go with it for a while. But the other kinds of things that I needed to do, like muscle training and things like that, and flexibility and that, I didn't keep on as much because they were kind of boring to me and they didn't have a lot of motivation. Then I broke both my legs, and then I had to rework to get my legs working again. And I have a tremendous amount of motivation every day on the mat, first thing, because I really want to be able to walk around a lot and not fall down and break any more legs. And so there's this new motivation for that. And sometimes we can have input on that if we do some mindfulness practice. And mindfulness practice is just paying attention to what's going on. And it can be what I'm feeling, what I'm thinking, and what I'm observing around me. And so for the issue about my legs, if I don't want to get out of bed, I go, just a minute, why get up and do those anyway? Say, oh, right, I want to walk until, next 25 years. And I have a respect for walking now that I didn't have before I broke the legs. And so I gathered up those pieces of the puzzle for me and put them together, and they motivate me. And for yourself, to encourage you to look at any kind of change you want to make. And it doesn't matter whether it's a change to make you healthier or just to make you more peaceful or happy or get rid of an annoyance, anything like that. To see, is it a doable challenge? Does it feel like it's manageable? Or sometimes we're like, I'd just like to be happier. And when it's like that, it's far too big. It's like, what exact things do I need to do? And so I walk the other way because I can't figure it out. So we have to get specific. That's part of the Goldilocks thing. We can't take on too big a thing. It's got to be just right. And so we consider, what things are standing in the way of me being happy, and how much better would I feel if I got to feel peaceful or well rested or whatever the thing is that I'm looking at. So I really have to bring those things to this part of my brain. They might be back here nagging me, from time to time, or I might see somebody who's doing them and think, oh, I wish I could, but it's not up here. And so in mindfulness, you work with a particular thing and you bring that forward. Like, why do I really want that? And sometimes we find out we actually don't. And we can, get rid of the cross training equipment or cancel the hike through the Alps or whatever. We find that that's not really what we want, and we can change our minds and move along. But if we do want, that would go back to how can I do it in small bites, manageable bites for me, and how can I encourage myself? And so when I encourage myself, I literally bring courage to myself. And so I always talk to people about taking a little step and doing an exploration. Because if we say to people, well, you know what, this week, why don't you just see if you can walk for 10 minutes? And they'll go, okay, listen, and they get all worked up about it. And then that works up resistance to it. And because we're afraid we're going to fail, and we're afraid that, like we're not going to like it or all of those things. But if we can do an exploration, and really, I tell people this, I don't expect you to get this done. I just want you to explore how does it feel when I think about doing this? What do I have weird resistances? I might have things back here in my head that say that, it's not fair that I have to do this, or, people will, think if I walk around now, they're going to expect me to do that all the time. And we have all sorts of glitches in our brains that slow down our motivation. And so this exploratory thing has gotten so many people over those humps and into the reality of it's like, oh, that was just sort of crazy thinking and fearful stuff. And I can go out and try this. Oh, you know what? I don't like walking at that time of day. Or I found out, I don't have any comfortable shoes. Or there's all sorts of interesting things like that. And when people start exploring, they find out really what they want. If it's reinforcing for them to do it, then I like this. Or they find out something, a barricade to it, whether that's a thought thing or a practical thing like shoes or hot weather or, anything like that. We can see what's going on with our motivation, how we're feeling about it. And often we have little stories in our head about, I never stick with anything. I have a lot of that in my head because I have a lot of attention issues. And so if I'm not really enthused by something, it's hard for me to stick with it. But along the way, I've learned lots of things to do with that. When you make it fit just right, it means the reward you're getting from doing it is worth the effort you're putting in to make it happen. And so when people with attention issues go along, we need lots more rewards at shorter intervals. Taking on a big task and doing it all the way through generally doesn't work for us. And despite the graph that we showed you earlier for more average people, it can actually get harder for us to finish as opposed to get easier like the graph showed. And so literally, if I know that I need more rewards more frequently than other people, I can build those in. And I have friends that I will text if I get out of the bathroom with everything, my hair brushed and my teeth brushed and my face washed, and I haven't, forgotten anything in the bathroom. And it's a humorous thing, but it's rewarding to share that with someone else who has the same kind of struggles. And the way that we celebrate some things, like getting through university after 4 years and, you have a graduation and your friends come and things like that. We need to have far more shorter timed celebrations for doing things and really encouraging people to celebrate when they are either not doing something that's causing them to feel not good, or they are doing something that is causing them to feel good. So both of those things, sometimes we need to abstain from something to move forward towards a goal that we have. And that is just as important to figure into the motivation as doing something that will take us toward the goal we want. Because if we've got a lot of things in the way and we just focus on doing something towards the goal, it's really difficult. Lots of times we try and ignore the barriers, but if we can just take them into consideration and actually start thinking about they're exploring those things. So the exploration way of the route. So, oh, okay, that I don't like getting up that early. So what can I work out around that? And find different ways. And again, it might be that I have a thing in my head that I don't want to get up that early, but I actually like being up early. Or it might be that it just doesn't work for my body and my sleep patterns and that kind of thing. And I look for something else. Try the Goldilocks about how comfortable is this? How motivational is this? So I really encourage people to do all the exploration around motivation. And lots of times this actually leads to a little bit of therapy because people have had experiences in the past where they might have failed or they might have been made fun of or they might have actually been trained into a particular idea of the world and what their place in it is and what they can do and how much work it is to change anything. So it really depends on our background and our experiences. But by doing the explorations, we can dig that stuff up. We can take a good look at it and make some plans to change it. The other thing, the idea of rituals and pre-game routines. So things like the rituals of getting up in the morning. I love to put my little yoga mat out on the floor. So when I wake up, I see the mat and I'm like, oh yeah, that's what I want to do. I want to do my leg exercises. And that is part of the ritual. And people do that in all sorts of ways. Professional athletes do that all the time. And lots of them have very specific kind of rituals that don't add to the accomplishment of the goal directly, but it changes something in their mind. And that's what matters as much as taking it towards the goal. And so somebody, putting their hat in a certain place on a rack when they get to the arena, and then they're going to do this. And then they do some actual things that, help them get ready for their event. But it really is the ritual part of it. Rituals and routines can give motivation a smoother ride. And so one of the things I often recommend to people is if you want to get out walking in the morning, put your shoes where you can easily find them and see them. And so when they roll out of bed, they see their shoes, or when they're ready to go out the door, everything is right there. It's really easy. So the ritual just rolls along and away they go. So the idea of ritual and pregame routines, it's been well researched, and it shows, against any technical odds, just with how it works in our minds, and it allows a smaller amount of motivation to move us through to where we want to be going. So there's lots of ways to explore motivation, but please don't forget to explore the barriers to motivation as well, whatever they might be to you, and work with your mind in a very mindful way to get it headed in the right direction. And just even suggesting to your mind something you'd like to do frequently enough will help your brain really work hard at finding a way to get there. And so repetition would be the other thing. And that's what happens in routine and ritual too, right? So repetition is the last piece that I'll leave you with. So I hope that you've found some nuggets that you can make use of, and that exploring motivation will be your next step. Thank you so much for listening today. And I'm going to close with a little meditation. And so for the people with me, feel free to go off screen, put your feet up, whatever you like. And for those of you who are watching live, I will tell you to get comfortable. And one thing about motivation is when you're really tense, you burn it up fast. And so if you take a deep, slow breath and relax, that can often really help. Just allowing yourself to relax into doing something. So just that little moment of breathing deeply. And of course, as I remind people all the time, to breathe through your heart. Imagine the breath going in and out through your heart. Because your heart is the command center, sending so many more messages to your brain than your brain sends to your heart. And that slow rhythmic breathing encourages your heart to send out messages like, things are good, we can do this, it's all right. So just doing that rhythmic breath can make motivation more accessible to you. People often say after they do this rhythmic breathing for a while, imagining it through their heart, and then picturing what they might want to be doing that they are having a little trouble getting going with, that they find some ease opening up around it. Particularly with those of us that have some tension in relation to getting something started or following through something to the end. This kind of short little mindful presence meditation can be really helpful. And of course, there's been a lot of research in visualization of doing something we want to do. And the more we visualize us moving through it well, happily, without too much fuss, the more likely we will be able to do that. Often we actually imagine the other way. We imagine doing something and then we're worried we're not gonna do it right, or we're gonna be too anxious, or people aren't gonna approve of it, or something will go wrong. And those things shut down motivation. So we don't have to worry whether we're right or wrong about imagining it, but it is just like rehearsal. So you might rehearse giving a talk, or getting up and going out for a walk, or decluttering your house. And this gentle holding that you can do in this kind of contemplation or meditation creates that feeling around the activity. And taking the step towards it becomes easier. And you can do the exploration we were talking about in this meditation. Different ways you might go about trying to do something. Exploring doing something and noticing what resistance you might have to come up to it. So remember, relaxing is as important as anything when you're motivating. Motivation is simply when our willpower and ideas align. So we're not trying to force ourselves to do things. We're just imagining we do have the strength and interest and even enjoyment in moving forward. So, if you're with me live, feel free to take a few more minutes while I close the video portion. And if you'd like to join us weekly, we do this on Tuesdays at 6 p.m. Mountain Time. And you can send an email to scientistsage@gmail.com. And we will send you a notification weekly. Thank you so much for joining us. I am with you. You are with me. Blessed be. Good night.